Welcome to Can I Get a Retake, where education meets innovation.
We have Elizabeth Griffith joining us today, author of General Chemistry for Engineers. So welcome. It is great to see you again.
Thank you.
For our audience, I had the pleasure of working with Elizabeth to develop her title. And so it was a great experience seeing it come from an idea into fruition for your students. So let's just dive into it a little bit and tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself. How did you find your way into chemistry and teaching for 11 years? What kept you there?
Yeah, so I feel like I had a little curved path to get to chemistry. So I actually originally never liked chemistry. I thought it was boring and I thought that it was all memorization and I just never really liked it. I thought I wanted to be a biomedical engineer when I went to college. And I quickly realized that I am not an engineer. And I know this book I wrote was for engineers, that we're getting there, but I myself was not an engineer. My brain just didn't work that way. And so I dropped that part. I was like, oh, I'll be a biochemist, right? Because we're moving through college now. I don't want to extend it much longer. And I also disliked biology. So then I was left with chemistry. And so I still didn't really love it. And it took me a while. I took a physical chemistry class eventually, and I realized, oh, like there's math involved with this, and realized I finally found my thing. It was like I kind of happened on it. And it wasn't until I got to grad school and was working on my PhD and realized I could do origin of life research that I said, oh, wait, now we're back in a realm of things that I really love. And so I kind of stuck with it from there. And then teaching also sort of happened on accident, I want to say. I mean, meant to be, I think, in the end. But um, I had kept in touch with my undergrad research advisor, and he said there was this job opening. You want to try teaching? And I was looking at postdocs and things, and I was like, sure, I'll try it. And I had fun. I thought it was so much fun. And that's really what kept me at it. It was that challenge of finding a way to relate to students who were honestly like I was, students that didn't like chemistry. They're like, chemistry is boring. It doesn't relate to my life. And that challenge of being able to get them excited about the subject that's not their thing and then they weren't going to continue in was just fun. And the students are fun. The whole experience. It was just, I think it's just, it was right for me.
Getting into the aspect of teaching chemistry for engineers, I know in your title you talk about getting the question, why do engineers have to take chemistry? How do you address that with students on day one?
Yeah, so I think that my whole goal over the years of teaching that class was to get to the point where no one asked me that question anymore because it's terrible, right? I mean, that's their first take on it is why do I have to take this class? What does it have to do with my life? Like this is terrible. I don't want to do this. So I realized pretty quickly that it really matters how you frame the class from day one. How are you initially presenting this subject to your students when that they don't care, they don't want to take this class, right? So you find things that they do care about and you frame it in that way, and it hooks them and it makes them realize, like, oh, wait, okay, I might not like chemistry, but maybe they do like solar cells. So then they're like, okay, well, if I want to understand solar cells, I need to understand a little bit about electrons. And now we're in chemistry. So it like you phrase it in such a way so that the students are thinking, oh, wait, I need this information in order to understand something that I do care about. So the first day of class, I would present the list of topics not as chemistry topics. I would present the list of topics of the class as these are going to be the applications that we're going to frame the whole class around. And then we'd zoom out, or I guess zoom in really a little bit and say, okay, within each of these, you will learn this chemistry, but in order to understand this topic. So it's really about how you frame it. I think that if you phrase it in a different way for the students, it changes their attitude completely. And I really could see that over the years that I taught the class and the changes that we made to the course. And with the book, I think that it really made a difference in those attitudes.
Getting that, the relatability, the connection versus just being that abstract concept.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you wrote General Chemistry for Engineers with GRL, What did you find was missing from the market that made you want to devote the time and effort to write it?
Yeah, so the engineers are an interesting audience for chemistry, right? I think that there's a couple of factors at play. So one, many institutions, if there is a general chemistry for engineers class, like specifically for them, it is usually a condensed one semester class. So they have to learn a whole lot of information in one semester. Usually it's 2 semesters of general chemistry and a little organic chemistry all in that one semester. So this is kind of like the first part of it, right? So you have to find a textbook that does have all of that content, which there are many out there that has all that content. Maybe not the organic, but at least both semesters of general chemistry. But you also want it to be at a level that's not too detailed for the students. You don't want to go down rabbit holes because they're already hesitant to use their textbooks. And so you definitely want to make sure it's one that they actually want to use, right? The information they need is actually there and not a bunch of extra. The second piece of it is you have to find a book, or preferably you want to find a book that gets at those interests for them, right? It's a class specifically for engineers. So you want to see things in the book that are for engineers. So now there are a few textbooks out there that are for engineers, specifically general chemistry for engineers. But for me, when I was looking at them, I think they went one of two directions that I didn't like, right? So one would be that they were very engineering. You know what I mean? So it was an engineering book. It wasn't a chemistry book. So it had chemistry in it, but it was really written by engineers, which is fine, right? But it just wasn't me as a chemist. That wasn't approachable for me as an instructor. It also, I feel like, didn't serve the needs for the class. I want a little more depth there. Or you'll have one that is written on the chemistry side, but it has a whole bunch of engineering applications in there, right? So like every topic would have an engineering application, then the next topic, another an engineering application. And so again, as an instructor, the students might like that, but I look at that and I said, I'm not going to be able to learn all of these engineering applications. I'm a chemist. I'm not an engineer. So for me to tie that into my course, it wouldn't work. I wanted something more streamlined, something that I could teach directly in that way so that the textbook perfectly matched a way that an instructor could run the class. And so thinking about that, I was like, okay, well, the applications need to be first, right? That was where I went first. Like you need to have that right at the forefront. And there needs to not be too many of them that it's intimidating as a chemistry faculty member teaching an engineering audience. And so from there, I found that little hole for me. Like that was a hole where I felt like there's an opportunity to develop something that I would use, but also I think other instructors might find useful if they're trying to develop a course or reinvent a course that's aimed at this audience with the same problems.
I saw that when you developed your instructor resources. So not only did you have the book for the students, but you also had that section that focused on the supplemental materials and other things to enhance the course, the things that the students don't necessarily see, but support the instructor. So
Yeah.
that was very well thought out as well.
I think it's so important. I think there are many textbooks out there, many general chemistry textbooks. And I think that as an instructor, you not only need a good product for your students, but you also need a good product for yourself. You need to have the resources, especially when you're teaching an audience that is not you, right? You need those resources to help you figure out, okay, I need some ideas. Like, how can I tie this in the classroom? Well, if that's already present there for you, it really takes some of the burden off of an instructor for adopting a new text. And so I know that from the other end of things. So I thought I'll try to put some of those things into my own book to help other people in case they want to do the same thing.
One thing that really stood out to me when researching your title is the concept of sustainability and how it runs through your text. You go through solar cells, biodegradable polymers, cleaner combustion. I can tell that wasn't intentional. So, how do you see chemistry's role in that larger climate conversation?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was intentional. I think that sustainability is not only a big discussion in society, but it's definitely a big discussion in academia too, and in the engineering programs. And so When I was thinking through kind of the outline of the book and figuring out what applications, I had spoken to some engineering faculty, and every time sustainability comes up. So it was definitely intentional, and chemistry is really at the core of it. I think there's a lot of chemistry every time we're talking about climate, whether we're trying to understand from like a science standpoint, saying why is climate changing in what direction, right? We're looking at what molecules are up there in the atmosphere. We're trying to figure out how they behave, what reactions they're going under, thinking about things like atmospheric aerosols and things that happen on their surfaces. All of these things are chemistry questions that scientists are trying to answer. But then thinking about on the other side of things, engineers, they're also using chemistry to try to come up with things like new materials to build things with, right, that are more sustainable materials, or thinking along those lines. Like they're going to be using this same sorts of ideas. And chemistry is at the center of all of that. So I think it was a natural direction to go. And it's also something that the engineers are definitely interested in. Even the emerging, budding engineers that are taking the course, they're also really interested in sustainability.
Was there a concept you finally got to explain that you always wanted to once you had your textbook to do it?
I think that I did write the textbook like I was teaching it. So I think
Mhm.
that there was a lot of little things in there that I would explain in ways that I would explain in the classroom. But I think really the opportunity that I saw was a way to present the topics overall. It's a way to kind of, like I said earlier, rephrase chemistry for these engineers in general in terms of these applications. And that was fun. It was a fun way to kind of reinvent the same material and to envision how it would work in the classroom, but then marry that with how it goes in the textbook. So I think it wasn't necessarily one thing, it's more that entire structure of having the opportunity to present chemistry that way that I thought was really fun and I was excited to do. And I mean, I like how it turned out.
As you should.
Are there any topics in particular that really seems to light students up?
Okay, so I actually did. I did this every semester. I would put a survey up at the beginning of the semester, like right after the syllabus day, and say, these are the application topics, which one kind of catches your eye? And it was surprising to me because it's a very population of engineers. You have mechanical engineers, aerospace engineers, you have
Mhm.
materials engineers, some chemical engineers. It's all of them, right, in one room. But overwhelmingly, the students liked the car. So they liked the internal combustion engine. And it actually, it probably was my favorite too. That's actually what started the whole idea for the book, is that I had done a little unit in the class just on that one application. I had worked that in. I was like, let's try this and see how the students respond to it. And they always thought it was really difficult, but they definitely enjoyed it. And then sure enough, even after the whole, thing is revamped, we're going from all these applications, they still like the car. So,
That doesn't surprise me now that you say that. I can see
yeah.
that being like fascinating topic. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's switch gears a little bit and go into more of academia and AI, the hot topic of the
Oh,
day.
yeah.
Um, we know that engineering programs are under pressure to get students graduated faster and with more applied skills. So, where does foundational chemistry hold its ground in that conversation?
Yeah, so I think this is difficult. I think there's kind of two pieces at play here. So I think first there is this speed pressure, and I kind of already talked about that with the students need to take one semester chemistry and cover all of this content. And that is a challenge to design a course that will fit those needs and get by in that speed. But I think that's different than this, they want the applied skills piece. So I think you really can't have applied skills without foundational knowledge. Right. So you like chemistry is a core science discipline. It really gives you it's part of that understanding of how the world around you works. And so if we think about, what engineers end up needing to do, right? They're developing new technologies, and most of the time these technologies that they're developing, they're either mimicking something that's already present in the world around them that they need to understand, or they're harnessing some process that's happening in nature and then they're using that for a new process. And so you can't do either of those things without actually understanding the world around you. So it it is kind of this challenging piece because we want to get them out faster. They want to get them out to get these applied skills and make them, more marketable, right, in the job market. But you can't do that without first having this foundational core knowledge in basic science. And so necessary evil is the way some people will view it, but I see it as an opportunity, right? I mean, this is ways for students to broaden their general knowledge base. And I think that that's really important for them long term, and eventually they will see it, even if they don't see it right away.
Have you seen a shift since you started teaching to now in how students kind of approach that learning process or that research process?
Yeah, I definitely have. I think that AI has played a big role in this. The class that the book goes with is normally a first semester freshman class. So these are it could be a second semester freshman class, but still, it's the first or second class that students take right from high school. And they have a big culture shock to how sort of the independence of college. They have to develop study habits very quickly and ones that will work and allow them to succeed. They need to get the grades they need to get, right? And I think a lot of them don't think as intentionally about any knowledge gained at that point. They're just like, I just need to move forward, right? Like I'm trying to get my degree. So I think that this has played out in different ways over the years. So I think originally, when I first started teaching, AI wasn't a thing. So students, Google was a thing though, right? So they're still Googling things and they're still studying, trying to find answers different places. What I mean, so they're studying, it's difficult when all these resources are at your fingertips. It's difficult to say, I'm going to sit in my own head and try to study in this way, right? I'm going to try to figure this out on my own. So they would reach for the internet. But AI has taken it to a whole other level. And so one of the things that has happened more recently is I'll have students come and talk to me after they take an exam and say, like, let's discuss exam performance. If you want to improve, I'm happy to talk about study strategies, things like that. So I'll ask them, how did you prepare for this exam? And the new thing is they will take my practice exams that I post for them from previous semesters. They put them into ChatGPT and say, give me more like this, right? Which AI can most definitely do, right? It can take that formula and it copies it and makes something that is exactly the same process. And then when they can't figure it out, they'll say, show me how to solve this. And it will give them step-by-step instructions for how to solve this problem. And I think that AI is a powerful tool, right? There are a lot of positives to it. But in this way, I think it's failing the students because they are tricking themselves into thinking that they are studying, that they are actually learning this content, when really what they're doing is they are having AI copy something that was asked a previous semester, which is fine, right? Like that can be useful in some ways. But when they see that broken down explanation, they read through it and they'll say, I understand that. I understand that. I understand that. And then they leave going, I know how to solve this problem. They don't know how to solve the problem, right? At best, all they've done is memorized a method for solving that one particular question. But that's not learning. That they have not internalized any of this foundational information about the world around them that they need that's actually useful as engineers or really anybody, right, in college. So I think seeing that shift, it's interesting because I think there's actually been a larger divide in terms of student success because of the way that they're using AI, I think there's a correlation. No evidence for that, right? But I'm sure somebody is working on that problem. But I just can see it anecdotally that I hear that a lot more, that this is how they're using AI to study, and it's giving them that false sense of security. So I don't know. It's a mixed bag, right? AI is great, but I do think you have to use your brain a little bit more to learn before you can effectively use AI.
Has it affected so far the way that you teach or the way that you approach your lectures?
I think I'm like a lot of faculty that I'm very old school in terms of in the way that I teach. And I think not old school in the way that I teach. I think I do unique things in the classroom, but in terms of what resources that I use. And Well, I personally don't use AI very often, and I think that there's a hesitance for me because I feel a little like I don't know. I feel like I like to use my own brain. I think there's something that's useful in stretching my brain. But I think in terms of teaching, there definitely is a lot of opportunity there to use it and to help students use AI in a responsible way. I do think, though, that you need to get to a certain point in your education before it's actually really useful. I think those intro courses, I think minimal AI is personally what I think to get them really getting that foundational knowledge on their own. And then as you progress through your education, you're more equipped to ask AI good questions or give it good prompts in order to help you solve problems, which is honestly what they'll end up doing in the real world. I'm married to an engineer and he uses AI all the time, but for him, he has that knowledge already, that base knowledge. So the questions and the prompts that he gives the AI are based on that knowledge that he already has. So I just think it comes. I don't think it's best to do it in those intro courses.
With today's engineering students entering the workforce, they are being asked to learn chemistry, biology, material science, and AI on the fly. How do you prepare them for the learning that's going to happen after graduation?
Yeah, I mean, I think they should be learning constantly, right, throughout your life. I think this is what we do, even whatever career you choose. But I actually think that this is the job of every single undergraduate class that students take, right? Is that we should be preparing them not in strictly in the sense of they should be retaining all information that they gain from our courses, but instead it should be more you're preparing them so that they have the ability to learn new things. I think this is exactly what we're supposed to be doing. And so what I would always tell my students is that they're going to leave my class and they're not going to remember the details. Like, let's be honest, right? You're not going to remember the details. I mean, I loved school. I stayed in school for many, many years and I didn't remember the details. But that's not the purpose, right? The purpose is for them to have this general knowledge base that they're continually adding to as they go through all of their courses. And that general sense for how things work that sticks with you. So then when you want to go back later and say, oh, I need to know specifically about this one thing, you can say, oh, I remember in college, I learned, like, I heard this word somewhere, and then it jogs your memory and you're able to apply that knowledge later on. So it's less about the details and more about this kind of general knowledge that you are gaining as you go through. And it's also a general way of thinking, right? How am I going to solve new problems? What skills have I learned throughout college to apply to these later problems that I've never heard of before, right? They're not things I can copy and paste, but I have these strategies to tackle these complicated things. And I think chemistry, many students think is complicated. And so it kind of gives them some of those beginning skills, how do I tackle a complicated problem?
If you could put one specific thing into their head, though, that they're going to remember 20 years from now, what would it be?
I think it goes right along the same lines of what I just said. You just keep learning. I think like that should be your goal throughout your entire life is that every day you should be learning something new. Every class that you take in college, you should be learning something new. Don't treat any of your classes in college as a hoop to jump through. Some of them will feel like that, but there is always something that you can take away from every single class, no matter how useless it feels for your overall education. You never know what you're going to need, where your career will take you. And I think once you hit the world, it's the same. Learn something new and just continue to widen your knowledge base. And the more you widen your knowledge base, the, more innovative you can be and the more impactful of things you can do in your life, right? Because you have this broader knowledge base to draw from. So just keep learning.
Love it.
Mhm. Um, in all of your years of teaching, is there a question that a student has asked you that you're still thinking about?
Yeah, so I've gotten many interesting questions, I think. But there's one that still sticks with me, and it's one that I've gotten asked many times, and it's part of kind of a nature of the field, I guess. So I'll get a little technical for a second, but just for a second. So I teach one of the bonding theories. It's called valence bond theory. And it's basically a theory that helps to sort of marry quantum mechanics, like that view of electrons, to how molecules actually look. So, how do we describe these chemical bonds? And so, anyway, as part of this theory, we talk about it's really math underlying it, right? But we talk about these things called hybrid orbitals. And it doesn't really matter what they are. They're these regions of space you're likely to find the electron, but they're mathematical functions. And I always make a big point to the students of saying, these are mathematical functions, right? We made them with math. They're not real, right? So we're using them to describe something, but they're likely not real things, right? Like we're just using them to describe them. And so I always, every semester, we get, they're not real. Like, how, why am I learning this, first of all? And why do we not have something better? Oh, and they're like, so what is real, right? Like, what are the electrons actually doing? And it's an interesting question because it goes a lot deeper than that, right? Because I think that as chemists, and even down to the physics level, we don't know what they are. We don't know what the electrons are, what they're really doing. There are ideas, but there aren't a lot of certainties. And so this kind of question of where does the math stop being reality, that it really does, that sticks with me. Thinking about like what is it? Are our interpretations accurate of the math? Because the math works, right? So we have good math. But are interpretations of what the math means real or not? And so I have some interesting conversations with the students about this because they're super into it. Like, what? Like, we don't know these things, or we can't calculate this, or this isn't real. And they get really excited. And I'm like, it excites me too. It's something I also don't know the answer to that question. So, yeah, so that still sticks with me. Like, where does the math stop being real? Like, where are interpretations of the math stop being real?
That resonates with me because I remember feeling betrayed that the Bohr model wasn't reflective of reality, or
Yeah.
it met our standards at a certain point in time, but we've
Yeah.
moved past that with the math. So I
Oh,
feel
yeah.
that. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. The students, I think it's fun because I love watching their faces as you talk through these things. You can say certain things and then you can just see the astonishment on their face. Like, what do you mean? And it's so fun. It makes it teaching fun. It's fun as a student, when your mind is blown a few times during a class. So keeps it interesting.
That kind of ties into a question I had about your initial research when you were getting your PhD, kind of about the origin of life and the chemistry and physics at the water level. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how that might tie into kind of what we can know from the math and how we can interpret that in so many different ways?
Yeah, so the origin of life is a very interesting scientific field. And I think for me, that was as soon as I learned I could do that as a chemist, I was sold. I was like, this is amazing. I've always been interested in the sort of religion and science discussion. And so I always thought this was kind of something scientifically that was restricted to biologists, though. So learning that I could do this as a chemist, I was like, yes, let's go, right? I'm so excited. But then you go to conferences and it's very interesting that the kinds of perspectives that you get because it's one of those disciplines that really crosses lines. So you'll have a lot of philosophers of science that are very involved in the same discussion that the actual scientists that are doing the work are involved in. And it necessarily is that way. You do need to have multiple perspectives there because it's something where you are reaching the edge of things that you can really have certainty with. And it also is something that I think really challenges scientists because you have to watch your words. You can't oversell your work, right? Because we don't have a time machine to go back and see how things happened. So it's trying to figure out things that likely happened versus things that likely didn't happen and what were the conditions likely like, and then making sure you list all of your caveats that it was like this if this was true. And it's a very quickly evolving field. It's fun and just a lot of different voices that get involved there that I think are keep it really interesting, and less restrictive, I think, than some other fields that I could have gone into.
Yeah, from a layperson's perspective, it is really fascinating. You hear things like panspermia, the amino acids
Yeah.
that can develop like outside of Earth's orbit, and like leaning into that, like what all the possibilities might be, but definitely coming from the philosophical side of things.
Yeah, and a lot of different kinds of
Mhm.
science. As a chemist, I got to hear a lot from geologists and biologists and physicists, and it's really interesting to get that interdisciplinary flavor to things, which for me is personally what I prefer. That's the way that I like to think of things. And so it fit me.
So besides origin of life, what else is going on in chemistry right now that's lighting you up? Perhaps an area that our listeners, you'd want them to go check out after this episode ends.
Yeah, so it's actually one that it is tangentially related to Origin of Life. But everybody's really excited about the Artemis 2 mission that just happened
Mhm.
and a lot about space. And I think people forget that there's actually a lot of chemistry in space. There's a whole field of chemistry that's devoted to studying chemistry in space and involved with space. It's called astrochemistry. And not my field at all, but something that I find to be super fascinating. Like there are people that are doing laboratory experiments, mimicking the conditions of space, trying to figure out what molecules will do. There are people that are studying the molecules that are actually in space, so observing them with different techniques, trying to figure out what's out there and what's happening out there. And there's also people that are modeling, like doing computer modeling of what would happen to try to understand both the laboratory experiments and the actual measurements in space. So there's a lot of really cool work being done to understand what's happening now, thinking about future missions to different space places in space, thinking about going to Mars, about building the lunar base. We have to know a lot about what's going on chemically in space in order to design the right things for humans to exist there. But also going backwards, thinking about going back to the origin of life. What was there before life was there? And these are all astrochemistry questions, right? Like this is talking about maybe even before the Earth was formed or right after the Earth formed. What were those conditions like in and around the Earth? So it's a really cool field. There's a lot of really cool stuff happening, and people should look it up. Figure out other things besides the spaceship we're building, which is really cool. The base we're going to build, also really cool. But the chemistry there, also really cool.
And I think that's what some people forget about like the importance and the value of these space explorations is
Yeah.
it's not just sending a rocket up just to go to a place in particular. It's to do all of this research to understand where we come from, where we're going, etc. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think
for sure.
yeah. Do we have any? We do have one question that we'd like to wrap up with. But before we get to that, we'd like to ask if is there anything that we haven't asked that you'd like our audience to hear?
I think that the only thing I would say is for any instructors out there, I think there's a challenge and really an opportunity for faculty to really innovate in their classrooms. Like, think about the audience that you have in your class, and it may not be you. Like, they might not be like you. And so, you really have this opportunity to be creative and think about new ways to present the material that you love to get other people to love it, even if it's in a slightly different way than the way that you love it. And I think that it's such an opportunity and it's so much fun and it can be challenging. But if anybody's thinking about it, be innovative, try it, right? Try something new. It's fun.
So we like to ask at the end of every podcast a question that is rooted in you are wrong. So what's something that the public gets wrong about chemistry that you'd like to correct?
Okay. This one is
Okay,
probably
limited to
obvious.
one thing.
Yeah, but there's one that immediately pops to my mind and it drives me nuts. Okay, so people always talk about there being chemicals in things, right? Like this
Mhm.
is bad because it has chemicals in it. And this is obvious and people say it all the time, but it really does bug me. Chemicals are in everything, right? Water is a chemical. There are chemicals in literally every single thing you touch, you breathe, everything. Your body is made of chemicals. So we kind of need to erase that from our vocabulary as a society because saying there are chemicals in something is not telling us a single thing. So we just shouldn't use that language. So I think
It's
that would be the thing that just drives me nuts and
it's
continues to
stating the obvious.
happen. Chemistry and chemicals are not scary, right? They are essential parts of everything around you. So We need to just get rid of the stigma. They're just there. Chemicals are everywhere.
We had a similar answer from a nutritionist recently who
Yeah.
said
Oh, I bet.
toxins, stop saying toxins.
Yes, I
Yeah.
bet. That's a good one too. Yeah, I like that.
Well, we have really enjoyed spending time with you today, learning about your interests and how you approached teaching this topic to engineers.
Thanks for listening to Can I Get a Retake, a podcast by Great River Learning. If you liked the episode, show your support by subscribing, sharing, and leaving a review. For show notes and transcripts, visit greatriverlearning.com. Can I Get a Retake is brought to you by hosts Michelle Manneman and Deanna Plusle. Our show is produced and edited by Michaela Albee. Artwork for the podcast is crafted by Michelle Manneman, and our intro music is courtesy of Comma Media. We'll be back with another insightful chat with a GRL author or expert. Stay tuned, and we'll see you soon.